Hello and welcome. My name is Cramps, and today I'll be going over some early farming strategies in Project Diablo 2. Now, this video is primarily targeted towards newer players who doesn't necessarily know every little detail about the game, but I'm sure many of you DGen veterans out there will be able to get something out of this as well. Maybe you've been doing it wrong all these years. Who knows? The different strategies we'll be taking a look at are Keyfarming, Arcane Sanctuary, Andariel and Mephisto, Travincal, the very secret cow level, corrupted zones, primeval soul farming, red portals, early mapping, and early bossing. I'll go over what each of the different strategies entails and what you can expect to gain from doing them. And at the end, I'll share some thoughts about converting your farming into actual progression. Hopefully this can help you get off to a great start in the upcoming season. If you want to skip ahead to a particular chapter, there's timestamps in the description below, which makes it easy to navigate this mastodon of a video. Before we get down to the nitty-gritty of the different farming strategies, let's go over some basics. In broad strokes, there are 3 factors that you need to optimize if you want to get the most out of your farming: kill speed, mobility, and navigation. Kill speed is kind of self-explanatory. The faster you kill stuff, the faster you can farm. Stack damage that matches your build, either in the form of plus skills, faster cast rate, increased attack speed, or damage modifiers. It's really that simple. If your character keeps dying, however, your farming will not be effective, and in some cases you do need to prioritize survivability over kill speed. Faster run walk is obviously a big factor for many builds to be able to get from A to B as fast as possible, so make sure to prioritize that stat if possible. But an even bigger factor is utilizing the built-in mobility skills for each class. The sorceress is clearly favored here with her teleport skill, but to be able to get the most out of this, you need to stack some faster cast rate on your gear. At the very least, you need to get to the 63 FCR breakpoint, and I would highly recommend getting to the next breakpoint at 105 as soon as possible. If you're having issues getting there with your current weapon setup, you should utilize your swap and stack FCR here, and just swap to your primary weapons when you need to kill stuff. This could be done with double spirits or a spirit sword with a splendor shield. Paladins also have great mobility with their Vigor Aura, Charge, and Joust skills. The Necromancer has Blood Warp, Assassin has Dragonflight and Burst of Speed, Druid has Gust, Barb has Leap and Increased Speed, Amazon has... never mind. For each of these classes, however, I would highly recommend buying a staff with teleport charges from a vendor as quickly as possible. You can buy one already in Act 3 on normal difficulty at Ormus. You shouldn't use the skill all the time, however, as it costs a great deal of gold to replenish the charges. And if you have to pick up more stuff to sell to vendors to be able to afford the repairs, the time saved by overusing the staff is lost anyways. Navigation is the real kicker here. It doesn't matter if you're quick at killing monsters or run really fast if you don't know where you're going. If you take too long to get to your destination, you'll not be very efficient in your farming. There are plenty of resources out there that will help you get better at navigating the areas in the game, and I'll not go too into depth with them here. I will, however, give some general tips as I go through the different strats, and in order to grasp these fully, you need to understand how tiles work. The areas in Diablo 2 consist of randomly generated tiles, but there is in fact rules that decide how these tiles are connected to each other. Particularly, a lot of areas have rules that pertain to the placement of exit tiles and waypoints in relation to the entry tile. This is not the case for every area in the game, but every time I'll be giving directional advice throughout this video, these are the rules I will allude to. Don't worry, you don't need to be a speedrunner to read maps, you just need some basic knowledge. This illustration is a simplified version of a map where you can see your entry tile in green, and a green arrow signifies the direction you are exiting the entry tile in. The other tiles here are the different directions from your entry tile, left, straight, and right. But obviously, it's not always the case that you enter an area from this direction. So on this illustration, you can see a more realistic combination of tiles. You have your green entry tile on the left side, and the arrow signifies the straight direction. As you see here, I've even put in a dead end that goes to the left from the entry, because there are many cases of dead ends that are actually facing in the right direction that you're looking for. On the bottom, we have our right tile. Even though the arrow is pointing down, it is in fact right, because we are relating it to the direction we exited our entry tile in. To make this even clearer, I'm going to show you what happens if we rotate this map. Here we have rotated the map to make sure that the entry tile is facing straight forward from your perspective. And as you see, the right tile is in fact right from your entry tile. So this is what you should be doing in your mind when you've identified your entry tile and the direction you are exiting it in. Just rotate it mentally to understand which directions are right, straight, and left. Let's have a look at some practical examples. Here is the Halls of the Dead level 2. The rules of navigation here is that the waypoint is going to be straight from your entry, and level 3 is going to be left from the entry. To make it easier to understand, I've marked the entry tile in green, the waypoint tile in yellow, and the exit tile in blue. If you use your knowledge from earlier, you can see that the yellow waypoint tile is straight ahead from your entry, and the blue exit tile is left from how you exited the entry tile. This example is a really fun one. This is Crystalline Passage in Act 5, and here the rules are that the exit is left, marked in blue, the waypoint is right, marked in yellow, and the frozen river is straight ahead and marked in red. As you see here, the map has been generated in a fashion where you have to go quite a long way to actually find your objectives. They still correlate to the rules, but there are a lot of tiles between your entry and your objectives. Our last map is the Underground Passage in Act 1, and this is a great example of the differences in the sizes of tiles. Here we have some really big tiles with some twists and turns. The entry tile in the bottom right corner actually has 2 dead ends built into the actual tile, but this is a typical example of the caves in Act 1. The rules here are that the exit tile is straight ahead and level 2 is left from the entry. If you don't fully understand this concept from your first viewing, don't despair. A lot of people, even veterans that consider themselves god tier in this game, don't really understand this. My recommendation is to go back in this video and look at the very first illustration I showed of a very basic map. With that in mind, have a look at the examples given and try rotating them in your mind in a way in which the green arrow pointing out from the entry tile is pointing directly upwards from your perspective. I promise you, if you understand this principle and you learn the different rules for navigating specific areas, you are going to be flying through the game in record pace. Alright, go grab some popcorn and strap in. It's time to go through the different farming strategies. Key farming consists of target farming the 3 keys that are needed to open Uber Tristram, where you obtain a Hellfire Torch. Getting your Hellfire Torch is a top priority for all classes in the beginning of the season, which means that tens of thousands of them will be farmed early on. Therefore, the Uber keys are in high demand from the very get-go, and these can be target farmed pretty easily as they are only dropped from a select group of super unique bosses. The bosses have a roughly 1 in 8 chance for a key drop, and you can drop up to 3 keys from a single kill. Although that is very, very rare. The Key of Terror can be dropped by 2 super uniques in Act 1, Bloodraven and the Countess. Bloodraven can be found in the burial grounds next to the Cold Plains. All you need to do is to go to the Cold Plains waypoint and follow the road to the burial grounds. The road forks into 3 distinct directions to the Stony Field, the cave, and the burial grounds. Luckily, there is a useful rule of thumb that will massively increase your odds of choosing the right path. Each of the grassy zones in the early part of Act 1 are always formed as a square, although with random indents here and there, which is illustrated here by the red lines on the image. Cold Plains in particular has 2 exits, Stony Field and burial grounds, but thankfully there are rules for the placement of the particular exits on the square. The stony field exit is always near the middle of one of the sides. Here the range for the placement is bordered by the blue lines. It will be somewhere in between, but the direction will vary from map to map. More importantly, in this case, however, the exit toward the burial grounds is always clinging to one of the corners of the map, as marked here by the yellow lines in the top corner in this case. This means that you can sense if you're following the correct path if you're heading towards a corner of the complete square. The more runs you can do with this knowledge, the better you will be at predicting the right path. Bloodraven is one of the quickest key bosses to get to, but beware, she's an absolute beast. Someone fed her Adderall or something, and she just won't stand still. With that in mind, this fight is not recommended if you are using ground skills like Fissure or Firewall, for example, but as she has no immunities, she can be taken down by any build. The other super unique that can drop you a Key of Terror is the Countess, who resides in the tower below the Black Marsh. Head to the Black Marsh waypoint and scout for the tower. Once you've found the tower, you need to traverse the 5 levels to get to the boss. The exit tile on each level will be left from the entry tile. The Countess will always be immune to fire and cold, so if you're running a fire or cold build, your mercenary needs to do the actual kill. The fire immunity can be broken with Infinity, which my mercenary is wearing in this footage. The great thing about Countess, however, is her unique rune loot table. It's a bit convoluted to explain how her drop table works, but she can drop up to 4 runes each kill. From her rune table, she can drop up to an ist rune, but in rare occasions, her regular drop table can fetch you upwards of a low rune. This makes her a prime target if you need lower runes, and this justifies the fact that she can take a bit longer to get to compared to Bloodraven. If you know what you're doing, however, she's a really amazing early farm. The Key of Hate can be dropped by Bloodwitch the Wild and the Summoner in Act 2. Bloodwitch is the saber cat that guards the golden chest that holds the Horadric Cube in the Halls of the Dead. You therefore need to go to the Halls of the Dead level 2 waypoint, and from there head right to find level 3. In level 3 you will find the boss left from the entry tile. Both her and her minions are cold immune, and I would not recommend going here on a cold build unless you have a tanky mercenary, cause those cats have claws, man. For any other build, the saber cats are easy pickings. Once you dispatch Bloodwitch, make sure to open the golden chest. Even though you can't grab an additional cube, there is a decent chance of some other goodies here. While Bloodwitch is one of the quickest key bosses to get to, the Summoner, on the other hand, is a whole other story. You'll find him at the end of one of the 4 directions in the Arcane Sanctuary. Here, there are no rules to help you choose a direction, so you have to go with your gut. I've heard of some anecdotal evidence that 2 of the directions have a slightly higher chance of being the right ones, but it's with a less than 1% increased chance, and in my experience, it's bullshit. For that reason alone, I would not suggest you go here to farm keys unless you have high mobility, like a sorceress. If you choose to do so, every time you hit a dead end, make sure to open the super chests here, as they have a decent chance of dropping you charms, runes, and gems. And you can even get lucky and open a rare or unique super chest that contains only rares or uniques. At the extremity of dead ends, the fastest way back is via town portal unless you have very high mobility, again like a sorceress, as the distance from the TP to the waypoint is shorter than the route back. The Key of Destruction can be dropped by Ishol in Act 4 and Neelathak in Act 5. To find Tyrael's former right-hand man, Ishol, go to the City of the Damned waypoint and make your way to the Plains of Despair. The plains connect to the City of the Damned in one of the 4 directions, but there is no rule that can tell you which. This is another example of a boss that is not recommended to farm unless you have high mobility. Even if you have a quick route to the Plains of Despair, you still need to find a demon in a random location. The only tell is a small marking on the map that is easily missed, like you see here. If you can find the dude, however, he is a pretty easy kill. Nilathak is kind of the opposite, however. He is very easy to find, but he can be somewhat dangerous. You need to head to the Halls of Pain waypoint in Act 5 and make your way to the Halls of Vort, where the treacherous filth is hiding out. The Halls of Pain are among the easiest areas in the game to navigate, as there are only 3 unique layouts here. The exit will always be in a fixed location in accordance to the layout. If you don't know the layouts already, you can pause the video here and grab some screenshots of the 3 variations. Once you get to the Halls of Vort, the way to tell which direction Nilathak is hiding in is to look at the walls. One of the walls will have a painting on it, and this marks the correct direction. Nilathak has a chance to roll immunities to either fire, cold, or lightning, and will be surrounded by quite a few ice boars. These phallus flashing freaks are cold immune, but not a big threat. Until they die, that is. Nilathak will use corpse explosion on their remains, and this is what makes him a formidable foe. In fact, the mere mention of his name makes all those "God gamer, I'm better than you because I'm hardcore only" players crap their pants in fear. They are almost as scared of him as they are of trying the somewhat difficult content in the game. No, you don't need a Nature's Peace with its Monsters Rest in Peace affix to be able to farm keys here. All you need is to be aware of your positioning. To avoid the devastating corpse explosions, the key is to not stand in the fucking corpses. The benefits from farming Nilathak is that he has an amazing loot table and is high enough level to drop every single item in the game, even Tyrios. Overall, I can highly recommend doing some key farming at least early season, as this is one of the few farming strategies that will yield guaranteed drops. If you're able to, you should definitely find space for some magic find in your gear, as the super uniques have great loot tables and will reward you with more than just the uber keys. This strategy is an old classic from LOD, and it still has some use cases. The idea is to target the ghosts in Arcane Sanctuary because non-champion or unique ghosts aren't able to drop armors or weapons, which means the chances of dropping runes from these are higher than most other mob types. The area contains cold, fire, and physical immunes, which means that this is a traditional farming spot for lightning builds. Personally, I don't think it's a great farm because it's kind of a crapshoot. Even though you have the added chance for runes from the ghosts, there's no guarantee that you will actually find high runes here, which would be the goal. You do have the summoner who can drop keys of hate, but as a lot of people do this particular farm early, keys of hate usually have the lowest value of the uber keys early season. If you do decide to do this strat, you should definitely reset your run every time you kill the summoner, since he is at least the only guarantee in here. Are you playing a weak lightning build and isn't able to use better farming spots? This could be your new home, but it's hit or miss. Not recommended. There are classic farming strats, and then there is the legendary Mephisto farm. For many years, these 2 act bosses has stood tall as one of the greatest way of getting geared quickly. And honestly, not much has changed. It's still one of the best ways to get a bunch of uniques. To be able to do this efficiently, however, you do need a lot of mobility. AKA, this is the playground of the sorceress. No other builds can compete with the Wicked Witch here, and honestly, you shouldn't even try. The key to have this farm be worthwhile is being able to actually get to the 2 act bosses as quickly as possible, and to stack as much magic find as you are able to. Early season, this means 4 socket armors with topazes and 3 socket helms with topazes. These shouldn't be worn at all times. You should just swap to these whenever you are doing the actual boss kill. And if you're able to, wait until the killing blow. Another great way of stacking magic find is by having magified items on swap. This could be a Blade of Alibaba and a Rhyme or a Splinter Shield. If you're not able to stack at least 200 magic find, this farm isn't really worth the effort. Andariel is the easier of the 2, and that also reflects in the drops you get. You can still get a lot of basic gear here, and it's a great spot for unique amulets and rings. but a lot of good stuff has a lower chance of dropping from her than from Mephisto. To get to her, go to the Catacombs level 2 waypoint. From here, the exit to level 3 is right from the waypoint tile. Level 3 is completely random, and the only way to get good at navigating this area is by experience and by being able to recognize tiles that can or cannot lead to level 4. You can either get a really quick exit or you get some bad RNG and have to almost full clear the level. Once you find her, she's a very easy kill, but if your character isn't able to do these runs in less than a minute, it's really not worthwhile. The statistically better option is farming Mephisto. Take the waypoint to Durance of Hate level 2 and look for tiles pointing left from your entry tile to go to level 3 and find the lesser of the primevals. If you need to make the fight easier early on, you can drag Mephisto away from the council members surrounding him and kill him one-on-one. But if your character is strong enough, you should definitely kill the council members as well, as they also have great loot tables. Although Mephisto can't drop you every item in the game, he is a treasure trove of useful uniques that are very much sought after in the early days of the ladder. If you don't find the stuff you need for yourself, you'll still find a lot of goodies that you can put up for trade. Both of these act bosses are highly recommended farming areas early on, but you don't want to be stuck here for too long. It's day 1, day 2, day 3 kind of stuff. These are very quick runs where you go to the Travincal waypoint, kill the council members guarding the entrance to the Durance of Hate, hope for the best, and quickly reset. There is a shit ton of fire damage here, which means you need to be res capped for fire at least. Personally, I would never recommend this farm unless you're running a gold find barb. In that case, this spot is king, as you're able to double your loot for each kill with find item. But like Arcane Sanctuary, the pits, ancient tunnels, what have you, it's a complete crapshoot. You can get very lucky and get some high runes early, but you can also farm this for an entire week and get fuck all. If you like doing these quick runs, be my guest, but this is the equivalent of playing a slot machine. No guarantees, it's all about luck. Moo moo, moo moo. The iconic secret cow level is still being farmed after all these years, and I bet Diablo 2 players have killed more cattle than all the slaughterhouses around the world combined. There's just something strangely satisfying in exterminating these bumbling bovines and seeing a bunch of loot magically manifest from their corpses. I've spent more time here during the early days of Lord of Destruction than any other place in the game. This is where I found my very first Sod rune, and even though this area isn't quite as strong as in LOD, I still find myself being lured back here every time someone in chats mentions the zone being corrupted. Basically, you go to the Stony Field in Act 1, pass through the portal to Tristram, run to the top left corner and yoink words peg leg. Go back to town and put the leg in your cube along with a Tome of Town portal, and voila, a red portal to the Kingdom of the Cow King opens before you. There are actually 2 completely different strategies for farming the cow level, because you can do it on both Hell and Nightmare difficulties and get some kind of results. The concept behind doing it on Nightmare difficulty is that you have an increased chance of finding skillers, as a lot of higher level affixes for Grand Charms aren't introduced yet at this area level. Personally, I think it's a pretty meh strategy, as you exclude so many good drops by doing this, and most stuff you find will be garbage and completely useless. I would not recommend it unless you for some reason are running a very weak build, or if you have some mechanical limitation that makes Hell content difficult for you. On Hell difficulty you will get better results, but even then it's a pretty mediocre strategy that rely heavily on RNG. Sure, you can get some good drops here, but there are no guarantees. If you want to farm cows early, there isn't really any build that can't do it, since they have no immunities and have pretty low resistances overall. Poison and magic damage have a slight edge here, as the cows only have 33 resistance to these damage types compared to 50 for the other damage types. Furthermore, the cows move really slowly in small packs, which means AoE is very impactful here. Recommended builds for this would be Plague Javelin, Lightning Fury, Fissure, Wake of Fire, Holy Bolt, Bone Necro, Blizzard Sorceress, but really any build will do quite fine here. Once you finish Hell, you will be greeted by a message saying a specific zone in the game has been corrupted, which means it's been converted into a level 85 area and you have a higher chance of finding World Zone shards here. This is also the only place you'll be able to drop the Talisman of Transgression, which is one of the ingredients needed for entering Lucian, although this doesn't hold huge value early on, as people wait a bit before farming Lucy, but later on they increase significantly in value. The density in corrupted zones have been buffed significantly this season to make the density somewhat similar across the board, but the drop rates of World Zone shards and maps have been nerfed accordingly. This means you'll find roughly the same amount of World Zone shards by clearing a corrupted zone, but you will kill many more monsters and most likely get more drops. I would definitely incorporate these zones in an early farming strategy, but only zones that fit my particular build. Which zone is corrupted changes every 15 minutes, and there's a nice tool out there that shows you which zones will be corrupted at which time. I will link this in the description below. Notable zones for me are the ones that can drop boss materials, all the Keyfarming zones, Arcane Sanctuary, World Zone Keep, and especially the red portals. World Zone Keep is particularly good as the drop chances for World Zone shards are already buffed here by default. Farming corrupted zones are by far one of the best early methods of getting some early currency going, which will enable you to trade for some starting gear, as most basic stuff can be traded for with World Zone shards. You should, however, be aware of the fact that World Zone shards have less value early in the season, and many people don't want to trade for them when it comes to more expensive items. Early season Mal runes are not 10 World Zone shards, and don't try to convince people that they are, because you're wrong. If you see items that are listed for a rune value or a specific rune, you can offer an amount of World Zone shards for them, sure, but don't expect people to take you up on that offer and don't start arguing. Grinders have hundreds and hundreds of World Zone shards after a couple of days of the ladder, and they have more need for actual runes. The idea that World Zone shards are worth 0.01 high runes is a carryover from before corrupted zones was introduced. However, later in the season, when people are not farming corrupted zones as they are in the beginning, World Zone shards actually start to increase in value, and at some point they're worth more than 0.01 high runes. You just kind of have to keep up with the market. Primeval souls can only be dropped by Mephisto, Diablo, and Baal on Hell difficulty, and these are one of the 3 materials that are needed to do Diablo clone and get yourself an Annihilus charm. These hold value throughout the season and only increase as the season goes on. They are also one of the few drops that are somewhat guaranteed. Diablo has a 1 in 21 chance to give you his soul. Baal has a 1 in 13 chance, and the drop chance from Mephisto is apparently a secret, although it's definitely way lower than his older brothers. We've already talked about farming Mephisto, and it's fine to incorporate him in this particular farm, but the drop rates of Primeval Souls are so low that it wouldn't be the primary goal here. Farming Arcane Sanctuary, where Diablo is hiding, is obviously a staple in Diablo 2, and I've communicated with many people over the years who swears by this strat and does nothing else than Chaos Run until they feel comfortable in doing maps. And that's fine. If you like killing all the monsters guarding Diablo, have at it. But anyone who claims this or any other particular zone is the best for finding high runes are all wrong. The best zone for finding high runes is the one where your particular build with your playstyle is able to get the most monster kills per minute. And then it obviously has to be area level 82 or above in order to drop every single rune from every single monster. But in regards to Arcane Sanctuary, if you want to maximize your profits, you need to target the pest drops, as these are the only quote-unquote guaranteed drops. To that end, you need to skip most of the regular mobs and go straight for the seals. Kill the seal bosses and Diablo himself, and then move on. The more Diablo kills you can manage every hour, the more primeval souls you'll harvest. From one stable to another. Bale running is great for many things. It yields a bunch of experience early on, and Bale himself can drop every single item in the game. It can be pretty slow early for most builds, but if your build is able to do them quickly, this is an amazing farming spot. Go to the Whirlstone Keep level 2 waypoint and go towards the exit, which is right from the entry tower. Level 3 is completely random, and as with Catacombs in Act 1, there are no help to find except being able to identify dead ends as early as possible, so you don't spend too much time running around the place. Once you get to the Throne of Destruction, clear the throne room as quickly as possible and deal with the 5 waves of Bale's minions. The minion waves contain fire immunes, magic immunes, cold immunes, and poison immunes. If you're not able to break immunities to your own damage type, you need to make sure you have a mercenary that can quickly handle business. Another way is by dragging some of the waves out of the throne room itself, but it does take some experience. After you've dealt with the 5 waves, kill Bale and repeat. Being able to farm primeval souls quickly and efficiently is a great way to print currency early on. They are very liquid, as all declone killers need a bunch of these to maintain their own farm, so I give this a clear A+. Farming the red portals in Act 5 is the only way you can drop demonic insignias, which is one of the ingredients for the Lucian fight. You'll find the 3 portals in Frigid Highlands, Arid Plateau, and Frozen Tundra. To find the portals, go to one of the 3 waypoints. Each area has an oblong shape, and the portals are always placed in the middle third of the width of the areas. So you want to make sure your search sticks to the middle. The queen of LOD content herself, the sorceress, is the only character I would ever do this on, as you need extremely high mobility to make this farming strat viable. The density in these areas have been buffed by around 2/3 this coming season without any changes in drop rates, which hopefully means you don't have to spend too much time here. You can clear all 3 portals in around 3 to 4 minutes on a fully geared sorceress, and in my experience you could, in previous seasons at least, expect to drop 1 insignia for roughly every 10 fully cleared portals. Theoretically, this means you'll be able to farm upwards of 6 insignias an hour. With the new buff density, this would potentially be upwards of 10 an hour. But RNG obviously does play a huge role in this farm. You could get lucky and get 1 insignia in your very first portal, or you could get very unlucky. Personally, I had a horrible bad streak a few seasons ago where I farmed the portals for 6 hours straight on a fully geared sorceress before getting a single insignia. At that point, I was just stubborn and wanted to find it myself. That being said, this farm has the potential of being the very best farming spot in the game later in the season. The reason being that nobody really likes doing this content, as it's very tedious. And because of that, the value of insignias usually skyrocket throughout the season. With the changes, however, we're going to have to see how the prices of insignias will evolve during the season. While you would usually have a difficult time selling insignias in the first couple of days of the season, as soon as people start doing more and more Lucians, they should be very liquid. We're going to have to see, however, with the new changes, how liquid they're going to be, if people are going to farm their own because it's easy now. It's somewhat of a crapshoot. Usually, this farm, if you're able to do it efficiently, has the potential of being the very best way of printing money, as so many people just want to desecrate their amulets. No matter what, people are going to want to buy insignias and they will have some kind of value. We're just going to have to figure out during Season 13 what that value is. This is In my opinion, a very obvious strategy, as mapping is clearly the most played endgame content in PD2, but for some reason a lot of people think they have to do vanilla farming for a week before they are able to do anything in maps. In my opinion, that's completely wrong. In most cases, you are able to do maps straight after finishing the campaign and farming experience to get to level 80, which is the minimum requirements for actually opening a map. You don't have to be able to do sub 5-minute maps for it to be viable. Even at a moderate pace, maps give you much more than almost all vanilla content. You get more experience an hour, you find more crafting materials, more charms, more high runes, and each and every monster is able to drop you every single item in the game. Obviously, there's still a lot of RNG involved when you're doing maps, but this is easily the place where most currency drops every single season. So don't think you need to shred through a map in a couple of minutes for it to make sense. If you like doing maps more than other content, there's no reason not to do this as soon as you find yourself able to. Now, there's no way I can possibly go over all the aspects of bossing in one video. If you're new to bossing, there is, however, a lot of resources out there that will help you to get more familiar with the different fights. You can even find quite a few videos on this topic here on my channel. For early boss farming, each class has at least a couple of builds that is able to do Uber Tristram and T0 Diablo clone with very basic gear on day 1. It's all about being familiar with the fights and knowing how to utilize your specific build. The other 2 bosses, Lucian and Rathma, aren't really profitable in the first couple of days, but comes into play later on in the season. There is for sure a lot of currency to be gained from farming bosses early on. Tens of thousands of characters will need Hellfire Torches and Annihilus small charms as early as possible when the season starts. But there's also a lot of grinders out there trying to meet these demands, and competition increases every season. So to be able to capitalize fully on the demand for bossing services requires quite a bit more than the average farming strat. If you have a solid plan and is able to adapt to the trends in the trade market, early bossing is potentially the most lucrative farm, but there is no guarantee that it's better than the other strategies for you in particular. So if you're new to early boss farming and want to give it a go in the coming season, start doing your research and make a detailed plan. This is a very competitive farm which requires preparation, time investment and adaptability. If you do this right, however, you will get rich, but it might cost you your soul. It's all good and well that you are able to farm efficiently, but it's just as important that you convert your efforts into actual progress on your character to make sure that your efficient farming becomes even more efficient. There are basically 2 things you need to master to take full advantage of the early ladder reset, and both are by utilizing the trade side efficiently. Sell your drops and buy upgrades. Both should be done as quickly as possible. A lot of items drop drastically in value after the first days of a new ladder, and you start having a hard time actually selling them. So you need to list your items quickly and sell them. If your stuff isn't selling within an hour or 2, lower the price. Don't try to hold out for one more Warstone shard for a particular trade. In the long run, it's not worth the time trying to squeeze every single drop of value from every little item. Just sell, sell, sell. The faster you can get currency in, the faster you can put them to good use. Buy upgrades, even small ones, as soon as you can afford them. And make sure to buy the most impactful items first. Your currency has no value sitting in your stash, so go spend what you can in order to get even more currency even faster. As I've laid it out, there are possible gains to be had from any of these early farming strategies. Personally, I'm mostly drawn to the farming spots that guarantee drops, like key bosses and act bosses, but there's nothing wrong with farming more RNG affected areas if you enjoy that more. In the end, it's all about having fun. To me, however, getting tangible progress on my character is a lot more fun than early farming areas. And because of that, I have a specific plan for progressing. My plan is not necessarily the right one for you. Instead of listing a specific progression path here, I'll give you an indication of when specific areas are more efficient to do. Key farming day 1 to 7. Your best option to getting an early Hellfire Torch is by farming your own keys. A key set consisting of 3 of each key is usually valued at 0.5 high runes early on, and you can either farm the torch yourself, which I would recommend, or you can try to trade the keys for an already identified torch that matches your class. Torches for some specific classes are valued higher than a key set, usually, like a sorceress, necromancer, and a given meta character of the season, which in Season 13 obviously is going to be Barbarian. But within the first couple of days of the season, you should be able to get a class-specific torch for the other classes for a key set. After you get your own torch, the keys themselves will still hold value. Usually a key set will be at 0.5 to 0.75 high runes throughout the season, but as you can get these from map events as well, you should only continue this particular strat if you really enjoy doing it. Andariel and Mephisto, day 1 to 4. These bosses drop a lot of the basic gear that people need early on, and you can make a lot of currency from these pieces by selling them quickly. Corrupted Zones, day 1 and onwards. The Corrupted Zones is a reliable way of getting some very early currency in the form of Wordstone shards. This will for sure help you get your basic gear quicker. Later, when Wordstone shards and talismans go up in value, this will be even more rewarding. But at that point, most people will gain even more value from doing other strategies, like mapping. Bossing, day 1 and onwards. Possibly the most reliable money printer in the early days. The earnings from the different bosses follow how you yourself would gear your character. First you want a torch, then an Annie, and at some point you want to corrupt your Annie and desecrate your amulet. To maximize profits, you need to follow the potential profit margins of the different services combined with how quickly you can do them yourself. All bossing loses profitability the further into the season we get. At some point, you will actually lose currency doing this unless you get lucky and drop a boss item, for which the drop rates have been significantly nerfed in Season 13. Mapping, day 1 and onwards. You can drop every item in the game from every monster kill, but it's also a bit slow early on. Pure demonic essences, which drops from map bosses only, have great value early on, but the prices drop like a rock very quickly when most of the player base is doing maps. PES farming, day 1 and onwards. Every Annihilus farmed requires 1 PES, and every character needs an Annihilus early. The Prime Evil Souls increase in value as the season progresses, which makes it a profitable farm that just gets better and better the further into the season we get. Specific 85 areas, day 1 only. This includes Arcane Sanctuary, Pits, Maggot Lair, Travincal, unless you're a Barbarian, or whatever specific level 85 area you want to farm. Personally, I would never farm these, but if your character is particularly weak, you can start here. With the changes this season, however, there really isn't a good reason to prioritize these specific areas over just farming Corrupted Zones, where you get the added Wordstone shards and density. The Secret Cow level, day 1 to 2. The only specific area I would consider farming in certain situations is the Secret Cow level. Due to the density in here, it's a great place to get some starter charms as well as weapon and armor bases. So if your build requires some specific low tier rune words to get going, the Secret Cow level might be the place to start for you. Red portals around day 5 and onwards. This is a strategy that doesn't pay a lot in the first days of the season, as people are not in need of desecrating amulets yet. Later on, however, it's possibly the most lucrative farm in the game, as demonic insignias skyrocket in value. With the changes to the areas in this season in mind, however, this might not be as lucrative as it usually is. Follow the prices for insignias to figure out when this strategy is worthwhile implementing. Thank you for making it so far. I hope you got some useful insights from this video that in turn helps you get the best start to Season 13. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you have any questions, comment below and I'll hopefully be able to clarify. Although if you wait until the season start, yeah, I'll be too busy farming. Sorry, dude. If you want to see more guides or other content, consider subscribing to the channel. I would very much appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. I wish you a fruitful season in PD2, and I hope to see you all out there. Happy hunting.